This is The Jump Around, outfitted by Iron Jock, streaming live on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel.
This is The Jump Around, and I am not Jim Rutledge. In for Jim today, I am Jesse Nelson. Thank you so much. Jim is on assignment today. He will be back next week on the show. We are outfitted by Iron Jock, and we love Iron Jock. I'm wearing the Iron Jock polo, just like Jim is always wearing when he's filling in, or hosting, I should say, here on The Jump Around. Use the promo code ESPN30 for 30% off all purchases over $50 at ironjock.com. Let me tell you, I asked for this specific polo for Christmas last year for my father-in-law. He went over to the website, ironjock.com. He was able to find it, used the promo code ESPN30, and guess what? 30% off, $50 or more over at ironjock.com. That's ironjock with a C. I'm rocking my Iron Jock right now. You can be as well here on The Jump Around. Again, my name is Jesse Nelson. I'm in for Jim Rutledge today. Primetime Ryan Wollersheim is our producer behind the glass running the show. Got a loaded Badgers show for you today. All kinds of things to talk about in Wisconsin sports. We do have Wisconsin football, of course, the big loss to Iowa. We do have Wisconsin volleyball coming up with a huge homestand this weekend, Friday, Saturday at the Fieldhouse, including a top 10 showdown with number 3 Penn State. Men's and women's basketball seasons are off and running at the Kohl Center. So much to get into. Let's go ahead and do so right away. And we start with the team that actually doesn't play this weekend, the Wisconsin football team, 42-10. I hope this is the final time that we talk about the Wisconsin football game on the road against the Iowa Hawkeyes on Saturday night at Kinnick Stadium. It was not great. I was watching, I was at the bar for much of it, and I'm glad that I was. I was out getting some free drinks at one of the local establishments in Sun Prairie celebrating a birthday on Saturday night. And that was a nice way to consume both the Coors Light and the Badger football game. 42-10 was the final score on Saturday night.
I believe, Jesse, you actually texted me during the game or after the game that you were getting some not so nice texts from our guest last week on the Jump Around, actually.
That's a great point, Wooly. So, yeah, let's start with that, because the way that I consumed this game, not only was I at the bar consuming a bunch of beverages and then went home and watched the final portion of it, and we kept on going with it there, but then it got to 35-10.
I believe
it might have been 35-3.
I think it was 35-3 at one point.
So it was 35 to whatever, it was over.
Yeah.
And then the Brian Bulaga texts start coming in. And it's 9:15, 9:30 on a Saturday night, Wooly. And I'm getting texts from, I think he will be a Packers Hall of Famer. I don't think he is yet. But Brian Bulaga, I'm pretty confident he'll be a Packers Hall of Fame. Packers legend. The guy who replaced Mark Tauscher. Legendary intro on Sunday Night Football. Brian Bulaga, Iowa. Appeared on this show again last week, The Jump Around, talking about his Hawkeyes. I'm getting texts individually and in the Wilde and Tausch group text that includes Brian Bulaga. No. He's hitting me from both fronts on how bad this game's going for our Badgers. And I kind of thought to myself, this is kind of cool. Brian Bulaga's text. We're talking a bunch of smack about how bad the Badgers are. But yes, the game was atrocious. And when we talk about disappointing losses this year, I'm not going to reflect on the Alabama loss at Camp Randall when Tyler Van Dyke goes out after one series. I'm not going to reflect on the Penn State one in prime time where the Badgers led into the second half. This one is the one that I think hurts the most this year. Braden Locke, 15 of 29 for 137 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Not good. Not good. Tui Walker running the football, 16 carries for 52 yards. As a team, 28 carries for 124 yards. Where was the offense? What happened? This was supposed to be a team that could put this air raid into full effect, and by this time in the season, even with the backup quarterback situation being what it was, you would think that at this juncture, this team looked... Remember what? Everyone's spirits were so high. Purdue. They're in Indiana.
Same difference.
Yeah, Indiana's not
this year, but
practically the same team. Just kidding. Purdue, Rutgers, Northwestern. Those 3 games... Such optimism, such hope for what this was looking for. Remember Locktober? Man, that was fun while it lasted. Calendar turns. Braden Locke goes back to what he was when he came into that second half against Alabama. I mean, what was that on Saturday night? And I think watching not only the text roll in from Brian Bulaga and others in our group text, but seeing what fans are saying on social media after this game, during this game, is Braden Locke the guy? Get him out of there. He doesn't have it. I don't know how anyone could say anything differently at this point. And I understand the Badgers are in a bit of a conundrum at the Braden Locke situation right now because Tyler Van Dyke is supposed to be the quarterback. I empathize for Luke Fickell because coming into this season, obviously, you don't bring in Tyler Van Dyke if you don't think he's going to be your guy that's going to be able to carry this team long-term into this November, hopefully a December run for what this team thought it was capable of this year. So that's a tough blow when he goes down in week 3 with an injury and he's out for the rest of the season. Braden Locke steps in, and it's a little rough at first. He figures it out, gets the stride in the month of October, and even played decently well against Penn State. Of course, made the one critical mistake, the pick 6, just like if you want to reflect it to the Packers game against the Lions, kind of the same blueprint. Locks was in the third quarter. Jordan Loves was in, right before halftime, but kind of the same vibe, like costly pick 6 backed up in your own territory, ends up costing the team the game. Momentum totally flips at that juncture in time. And Braden Locke hasn't been the same quarterback for the Wisconsin Badgers since he threw that pick 6 against Penn State. It makes you wonder, what is this going to be for the rest of the season for the Badgers? Because you could try and go with Mabry Mettauer and try and see what you can get out of a freshman. At this juncture, I don't think that's the move. He doesn't seem ready. If he was, I think that move probably would have been made through that stretch with Purdue, Rutgers, Northwestern. Right? You would think if you're going to make that change, that's when you would do it. You wouldn't just run it back with Braden Locke. Clearly, Luke Fickell believes in Braden Locke. Clearly, this offense and Phil Longo believe that Braden Locke gives the team the best chance to win. Well, then, what was that on Saturday night? And that's the question. You can't bring in a true freshman to make his first career college start against number 1 Oregon, assuming Oregon is number 1 when they come to Camp Randall here on next Saturday.
They'll be number 1.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way, right? There's no way Oregon falls this week. You got to ride this with Braden Locke, I think, for the rest of the season, unless you're going to make that change at Nebraska. But at that point, then the team's got 2 chances to win 1 game to continue the 3rd longest active bowl streak in college football, which is now the next metric by how we're going to measure this team and the success of the rest of this season. So you have to ride this thing out with Braden Locke because the other options don't feel like it's the right move at this point, unless you don't care about that bowl streak and you want to just say, let's get Mettauer prepared for next year if he's going to be the guy. If that's going to be the case, then sure, you start to make that change. But Wooly, I don't think there's any way you can't ride with Braden Locke for the rest of the season. And it comes down to coming out of this bye week. Yeah, you take a breath this week, and then Phil Longo and Luke Fickell and the rest of the squad's just got to say, hey, Braden, 3 weeks. Let's go, pal. Figure this thing out.
I mean, you definitely play him for the first half against Oregon. And then depending on how things are going there, if you think it's gotten so bad with Braden Locke that you think legitimately maybe Mettauer is the one who gives you the better chance to win, then that's the only reason you make the change. But I agree with you. If it's come to the final 2 games and if they feel like Braden Locke still gives them the best chance to win, whatever chance that might be, who knows? Currently, they're given like a 50% chance to win Nebraska and Minnesota.
Yeah.
If they feel like he gives them the best chance, then you ride with Locke. But it could be the aspect if they legitimately think Mettauer is a better option, gives them a better chance to win, or, dare I say it, if the team around him might feel better about Mettauer. I don't know if, the second half against Iowa, it felt like the team was done. And I don't know if they need a spark of a quarterback change to change that.
Well, they need a spark of something. And whether it's a quarterback change or whether it's just a kick in the tuchus, whatever it is, they need something here. And I heard Barry Alvarez say this. Mark Tauscher and I were talking about this on Wilde and Tausch earlier today, which you can find weekdays 9 to noon right here on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel, also on 100.5 ESPN. Barry Alvarez was on the Great Dane Huddle on ESPN Madison earlier this week, and I want you to see what Barry Alvarez said about coaches needing to step up down the stretch. Not the players, coaches needing to step up down the stretch.
I'll be very anxious to see how their team responds because this is where coaching comes in. This is where, as I used to tell assistant coaches, that's why they call you a coach. You've got to have an answer for all these things. You've got to break this down, see what your problems are. We could still end up having a very good year. You got games that are winnable, but we have a lot of things that have to be corrected. Let's correct those things and really put an emphasis on what we can do and finish out the year strong. Instead of limping out or feeling sorry for ourselves or making excuses, or we don't have this or we don't have that, let's come up with some answers of what we can do and clean them up and play well. Finish the season strong.
Okay, first of all, that has me fired up to run through a wall for Coach Alvarez, which is amazing. Barry Alvarez every week on the Great Dane Huddle here on ESPN Madison. Coaches, and it's always interesting when I hear Barry Alvarez, someone of such prominence, such significance for Wisconsin athletics, echoing some of the same sentiments that I'm seeing accounts that I think are made up on Twitter.
Luke Fickle's vest, you mean?
Exactly. They're all, or Tommy 6189473. When those messages are in line, either Barry's got a burner, which I don't think is the case, or everybody's just on the same page about what's going on in the landscape of Wisconsin Badgers football. And what I feel is the latter, is that everyone can see what's happening. But now you have a bye week and 3 huge games. And here's the reality for Wisconsin football, and I'll leave it at this. When Braden Locke took over against Alabama, I didn't think he looked like he had it. In fact, before this season, when Braden Locke found out he was going to be was it 1 and 1A that Phil Longo referred
1A,
to
1B.
1A, 1B for Tyler Van Dyke and Braden Locke coming into the season. Braden Locke said, yeah, he'll see what happens, and then he'll think about maybe looking at making a change after. He had already, to me, sounded like he had 1 foot out the door before the season even started, and he got the opportunity that he did. Braden Locke, here are the numbers, and this is straightforward. This is what it is. His career completion rate at Wisconsin is 53.9%. Let's call it 54%. We were just doing Wildy and Tausch where fans were complaining about Jordan Love at 61% being an inaccurate quarterback. Braden Locke at 54%, not going to get it done in a system that should be designed for him to have that success. He has a career quarterback rating of 112.4, which is pointed out on our fancy show sheet right here, ranks 22nd of 23 quarterbacks who have started at least 2 games at Wisconsin since 1993. They didn't even like throwing the football for half of those years. It's the air raid offense. You need to rely on your quarterback to find success in the air raid offense. It's the fundamental basis of what the whole thing is centered around. And if you don't trust the guy throwing the football and he hasn't proven that he has warranted that trust, because there aren't many other options available for the rest of this year, I think you ride this out. But if I'm Luke Fickell, if I'm Phil Longo, if I'm anybody involved with this program, I'm starting to already think about what's coming up next year. And Oregon, I don't think anybody's feeling super optimistic about the number 1 team in the country, the undefeated team in the Big Ten, coming here next Saturday night for a 3rd straight primetime NBC game. I don't think anybody's feeling great about what that situation looks like right now. So the focus is Nebraska and Minnesota. And the reality is this. Coming into the season, I think we all thought, I said this at least on our very first College Game Day pregame show at the start of the season, Wisconsin might be a better team this year than they were a year ago, but because of the strength of schedule, they might be battling to keep that bowl streak alive, and the record may not even be as good as they were last year. We're in that situation. I think there have been glimpses of hope and glimpses of opportunity of what this is supposed to look like with Luke Fickell and the rest of the staff around him. I think we've seen what the glimpses look like. Winning 1 of 2 games against Nebraska, who has stumbled significantly, and Minnesota, who the Badgers were able to go and beat last year. You get Minnesota at home at Camp Randall on Black Friday after Thanksgiving. Those are 2 very winnable games for this team, even with the situation that they've been in. The Iowa loss is going to look at being the worst loss that they've incurred this year. The Penn State loss is still a top 10 team that's going to make the playoff most likely. The Alabama loss is a team that's probably going to make the playoff, although we'll see how that goes with LSU this weekend. The Oregon loss, that team's going to make the playoff. If all the losses or most of the significant losses this year are against teams that are going to make the playoff, I feel totally different about this team. The loss to Iowa is not something that can happen the way that it did. Got to avoid any kind of stumble like that moving forward, and I don't know that this coaching staff can survive another massive stumble the way that happened on Saturday night in Iowa City. This is The Jump Around. I'm Jesse Nelson in for Jim Rutledge here on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel. The Jump Around is brought to you in part by Simden Chevrolet in Mount Horeb. You're only minutes away from a better buying experience at Simden Chevy in Mount Horeb. You know Jim Rutledge, who's usually here. He tells you all about his big blue truck. Looks just like my Iron Jock shirt. And that's from Simden Chevrolet in Mount Horeb. Thanks to the better buying experience, working with the incredible team at Simden Chevy in Mount Horeb, Jim was able to get connected, and you can as well. Enjoy a personalized buying buying experience and go to Simden Chevy in Mount Horeb to go ahead and get started. All right, so plenty other things going on in the world of the Wisconsin Badgers this week. We cover it all here on the Jump Around on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel, including men's basketball tipping off its season on Monday night. They were down 21-6 to Holy Cross, and that was not good. And everyone's thinking, whoo, boy, what are we signing up for this season? Well, they figured it out. They won by 24, 85-61. 3 players score in double figures. That was really fun. And here to talk more about that opening night experience and what lies ahead for the next week or so, we are joined by ESPN Madison and Big Ten Plus Student U broadcaster, Krissy Birdsall. Krissy, thank you so much for taking the time and coming. This is your second straight week you're on this show, I'm told.
Season. It's going to be a big time matchup. I mean, with everything going on, it's nice. Something to look forward to, at least, coming in this week.
Absolutely. Now, you were here breaking down your tweet that went viral last week of the student section having a tough time getting into Camp Randall Stadium. How full was the student section at the Kohl Center on Monday night for the men's basketball season opener?
The student section looked good, but I did notice it was the whole Kohl Center a little not as packed as I thought it would be.
Okay, well.
I was surprised. For a home opener, Holy Cross, team that everyone thought they were going to beat by 100, like we saw in the Arkansas State game last year. It was a completely different vibe.
I will say this. I went to, I think it was the second game of the year several years ago. Prairie View A&M came to town, and we got tickets very easily in the upper deck for that game. So let's not hold it against the fans too much. I think that that's nothing new. Let's see how Arizona goes next week when the Badgers get a top 25 opponent and a long time. Do we call it a rival? When we met Arizona in back-to-back Elite Eights, Wooly, would you say Arizona's a rival? It's more of like a friendly foe that we've kind of taken it to, except for last year over the last several meetings.
I guess it's maybe like a playoff rival, almost like the 49, making it Packers centric, which we do enough of here. Almost like the 49ers, but like your out west foe who you run into every once in a while. Yeah, bad feelings toward, but you don't see him often.
That makes sense. Krissy, what'd you make of the Badgers' performance? You were there on the sideline with Big Ten Plus on Monday night for the first broadcast of the season. If people were watching that game, they saw you on the sidelines, which is awesome. Congratulations on that opportunity. I'm jealous. I wish I had it when I was in college. The Badgers win at 85-61. That's the good news. The bad news is they were down 21-6 at the beginning of that game. What the hell? Or, woohoo, they got it done. They figured it out after a rocky start.
I think you got to be positive about it because you look at the new players that are coming in. You have John Tonje, you have John Blackwell that's switching to the 1, starting for the first year. Have a couple more players in rotation. Nolan Winter getting the start at the 4. You got to feel good. You know they were going to come out a little rusty. A little bit surprising to see that 21-6 down 16 as much in that first half. But after that first 10 minutes, they started to click. They started to figure it out. And they looked really good. That second half, they scored 50 points in that second half. Things were a well-oiled machine. They were able to break down Holy Cross defensively, and then they were able to score with John Tonje, and you've got to feel really good about some of these new guys coming in as well.
Yeah, so the Badgers obviously active in the portal this year. Unfortunately, most of that was with players leaving, 8 players departing the program in the portal, but they did have 3 come in. Tonje's here. That's an awesome experience that he had in his big game on Monday night. But when we look at what this team is this year, overall, and you're still a student. You're part of the Student U broadcast. You're a senior at the University of Wisconsin. So when you're just talking with your friends, not when you're on sideline reporter duty, when you're just in class, when you're just hanging out on the weekends, what's the overall vibe about Wisconsin men's basketball at this point from the student body?
Cautiously optimistic is what I'm going to say. I think that you look at what last year was, where they were heading into February, everybody thought that this was a team that could go to the Final Four. And then February happened, and all hope was lost. And then you see all these players leaving, and basically by the time April came, you were bottom of the barrel. You started bringing in these new guys. You realized that there are some guys that we can develop and play around. And then now comes October, November, and the hopes are back up. You're ready to be hurt again. That's basically how it works. And that first game, as bad as those first 10 minutes were, the next 30 minutes made me feel good about that team.
Montana State tonight, Appalachian State on Sunday morning, 11 a.m. What are we doing with a Sunday morning, 11 a.m. tip? At least there's no Packers game that it's competing against, so that's good. But then the big one is next Friday night, Arizona comes to the Kohl Center. Krissy, as you look at these next couple of games, what would make you feel good about Wisconsin's chance to upset Arizona when they come to town next week? What do you want to see tonight, and what do you want to see Sunday when you're down there on the sidelines with Big Ten Plus?
I think they need to be really solid on the rotation. I think the one position has been really interesting. Greg Gard described it to me on Monday as a point guard by committee, using Cameron Hunter when he's healthy, Daniel Freitag, John Blackwell, maybe even seeing Max Klesmit getting in there as well. And Kamari McGee. Can't even forget about Kamari McGee. He had so many minutes in that first game. I think when they really start to figure out who's going to be that true one, even if it's a 1A, 1B, I think it's going to be Blackwell and McGee. If they get that really solid, that's a nice base to start to build around. The second thing is what they're going to do at the 4 position. Currently, they had Nolan Winter there, and he played really well at the 4. 6 of 6. I think he had 15 points, 16 points. But I always saw him as a 5 backup to Steven Crowell, and then maybe seeing like Xavier Asmus come in. He had played a few minutes, but I know they're working on him a little bit more defensively to get up there. If they can get those 2 positions locked down, I still feel very comfortable at 2, 3, and 5. And if they can get 1 and 4 figured out, they have a really good shot to make it interesting against Arizona next week, because Arizona, same thing. They're starting to figure it out on their rotation as well. Just Greg Gard's got to figure that stuff out a little bit sooner than maybe he had hoped.
One thing, and I want to bring Wooly into this conversation too, Primetime Wollersheim, along with Krissy Birdsall, Big Ten Plus, of course, from ESPN Madison here as well. I'm Jesse Nelson, in for Jim Rutledge here on the Jump Around. So I never know when in a college basketball season to first officially measure how good I think a team is going to be. Because I like to think it's the Thanksgiving tournaments, like the week of, whether it's the Maui Invitational or all the different tournaments, the Greenbrier that Wisconsin's going to be part of this year. Like I think it's those tournaments to see how you match up with some of that competition. But then there's even non-conference games. There's that 2-game Big Ten window in early December that takes place, and then you go back to non-conference, and suddenly it's like late January. We're getting ready for the AFC and NFC championship games. I'm like, how good is Wisconsin basketball actually going to be this year? I guess I still don't know. When do you both start to measure how good you think this program is going to be? Like, what's the good measuring stick moment here early in the season? Ryan?
For me, I think it's... Honestly, I don't think there is a great measuring stick in college basketball. I think
At all?
Not really. When you think about it, it's like the most fluid sport where throughout the season, teams change and look like another team from November to February. I mean, I think it was 2 years ago maybe, Wisconsin battled with Kansas at one of those early season Thanksgiving tip-offs.
Yeah, that was the Atlantis one. I love that one.
Battle for Atlantis. And they battle with Kansas, and I think Kansas went on to be one of the better teams, higher-ranked teams in college basketball this season. They were a 1 seed. And then they look really good in that game, and then they go on to finish the season, and they go to the NIT. So I'm like, I don't know. It's hard to take too much away from those early season non-conference games. I'd say probably a real measuring stick is like second half of your conference season. I think that's probably the best way to really decide if a team has it or not.
So you're really saying like Super Bowl time or maybe early February is like when you start to flip the script.
Where I'd really start to say like, I know for sure what this team is. Yeah. I think you get an idea or like what they need to work on. But by that point, then you're like, now we know what this team is. So I don't know. I think it's
an interesting assessment.
I think it's just that's how most college basketball teams are now, right?
Well, and that's why I asked the question too, Krissy, because of the transfer portal and like figuring out your identity as a team early on in the season. We've seen it at college football too, where these non-conference games early on, it takes a week or two to try and figure out what you actually have. How do you measure Badger basketball?
I think it's super dependent on who you're playing in non-conference too. You have to think about that. If you're looking at a team like Wisconsin last year to this year, their non-conference schedule was a bit of a gauntlet. I mean, you had Tennessee, you had Marquette, you had a couple of really good big heavy hitters in there, and then you go into the Big Ten season. And at that point, by the time Big Ten season started, I felt like I had a good grasp of this team. For this team this year, I kind of agree with Wooly. I don't think it's going to happen until February because of who they're playing. You have a couple of big-time matchups, but then you look at the other matchups, the games that they should win, they'll look really good, but then Big Ten season, that's where your bread and butter is going to come. That's where you're going to see, okay, is this team top 5 in the conference or top 15 in the conference? Because the Big Ten is so interesting this year. Anybody could beat anybody, And I think we'll start to figure that out mid-January, maybe like Super Bowl time. I'll give you Super Bowl time.
All right, Super Bowl time is, I guess, so we're saying February. So trying to find out by Thanksgiving what we think the Badgers are going to be this year. I guess that thought has gone by the wayside. And measuring against non-conference opponents segues well into what I want to play for you here. It is Coaches Week on ESPN Wisconsin. Alex Strofe, Mr. Irrelevant podcast and digital show every Monday, Wednesday, Friday here on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel, had a chance to sit down with all 4 men's college basketball coaches of the Division I schools in the state. So that's Green Bay, Milwaukee, Marquette, and Wisconsin. Alex Strofe catching up with Greg Gard, and this is something that I have not heard any men's basketball coach at any level say up to this point in all of time. And so I was fascinated when I saw that this is what Greg Gard said about his approach to non-conference games and what he thinks the future may hold in college basketball.
I'm almost a proponent, Alex, I think with where college athletics, specifically at the Power 5 level, is going, we need to just play 34 conference games. Go play. There's 18 of us play, 17 of them twice. There's 34. And I know coaches get into, I need to have, some build-up games. Ask Andy Reid where his easy game is, or Matt LaFleur. Ask him which one of those 17 are easy. There aren't any. So I think when we're really looking at what we're trying to accomplish from a financial standpoint, a bottom line with revenue sharing and everything, why not tee up 34 of them and play? The Lakers don't play the Sioux Falls Skyforce.
No, they do not.
So I see that's where we're going.
All right, Coach Gard taking a very unnecessary shot at the Sioux Falls Skyforce. Wooly's just bought the jersey on Amazon the other day. He's a big Skyforce guy, right?
Can't wait to wear that to the next Darty. It's going to go hard. It's going to go hard in March.
Krissy, we like to ask a question, visionary or idiot, on Wildy and Tausch, which we haven't actually asked in a very long time. But visionary or idiot, skeptic or believer maybe, in the no non-conference game scenario that Greg Gard has proposed?
I'm a believer. I love Greg Gard's stances on things that are going on in college basketball right now. He was really a big, talker about when it came to NIL, the transfer portal. He was really candid to the media about what the situation was when all of the transfers were coming out, and then when he brought in a couple of guys this year. I like the idea of just playing your conference games because that's where you're going to see who's better than who, and you get a really good test of what the season's going to look like. And especially the way that the conferences are built now, we have 18 teams in the big conference and the Big Ten. That's going to be the true test of what you're going to see.
It makes me wonder because we've heard this conversation take place around football where, okay, this is getting to the point where the Big Ten has so many teams, the SEC has so many teams, the super conferences are just going to do their own thing. No one's ever really thought about that in the scope of college basketball also, but it makes me wonder, is there a conversation that may have actually taken place at any point about this potentially being a thing? Because if the Big Ten were to, look at all the teams in the Big Ten now. If you want to play 34 games, which is like the college basketball regular season, you can do that. Maybe do your early season tournament can be your one opportunity to play some non-conference opponents and kind of go on your trip to Florida, the Bahamas, or Maui, or wherever it ends up being. And that's your one opportunity to play teams from outside the conference. And then beyond that, make it all conference games. And I really like how that would allow for proper measurement of how good teams are within their own conference. And it would almost make the regular season more impactful because then you'd be measuring teams similarly against one another instead of incorporating non-conference wins and wins against teams with a certain RPI and what. You can take all of this into consideration just within your conference, and it allows for a little bit more, I would think, it would allow for more transparency, I think, for the NCAA selection committee at the end of the season when you say, okay, we got this many teams in from the Big Ten because look at what they all did against one another. We got this many teams in from the American Athletic because they did this against each other. I think it's a very interesting scenario to consider. I think we'd be several years from that potentially being a thing, but I'm fascinated by what it could mean for the future of college basketball. Wooly, quick answer. Would you be in or out on that scenario?
I'd be in on it because college basketball needs to change some things to rejuvenate it for fans. I think whatever they can do to try and, Maybe you keep feast week, but outside of that, non-conference, don't need to worry about it.
Especially, and we were talking about this on Wilde and Tausch the other day, how college basketball's start of its season just seems like it's so like unexpectedly like, oh, it's college basketball season. Oh, it's just a Monday night. Here we go. Boom. There it is. Like the 24-hour marathon that ESPN used to have was the best when you had like student sections decked out in pajamas and they showed up at 4 a.m. and it's like, Texas Corpus Christi against Sam Houston State. Like, it was just amazing. I love that. 5 a.m. I remember doing a morning show at our Beaver Dam station. We were set up for a morning show at a car dealership, and I was watching Green Bay and, gosh, who was it? One of the teams in Texas. I forget which one it was. They were in purple and white. I forget which team it was. Gosh darn it, that's frustrating. But watching this game at 5 a.m. as I'm eating a breakfast sandwich, getting ready to do a morning show is just the best. Sun's not up yet. Oh, it's fantastic. Krissy, thank you so much for your insights into the Wisconsin Badgers men's basketball team. We look forward to seeing you more this season on Big Ten Plus, and of course, your contributions with ESPN Madison as well.
Thank you guys for having me. We'll have to see how the Badgers do on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin, indeed. Krissy Birdsall joining us here on the Jump Around. I'm Jesse Nelson, in for Jim Rutledge today. Coming up next, we do still need to talk about Wisconsin volleyball with a huge homestand coming up this weekend, Friday and Saturday at the Fieldhouse, including a matchup with number 3 ranked Penn State. We'll do so with Anna Smrek coming up in just a moment on the Jump Around.
Staying on top of our game is one of the hardest things to do. At Game Day Men's Health, we specialize in testosterone replacement therapy, weight loss, erectile dysfunction, and wellness. Proven to increase energy, build muscle, improve mood, and boost sex drive. Get started now and book your free consultation and testing. You'll get test results back in minutes, and we'll create a plan to optimize your health. Game Day Men's Health. Book your free consultation today.
Back with you on the Jump Around here on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel. In for Jim Rutledge this week, my name is Jesse Nelson. The 7th-ranked Wisconsin volleyball team has a huge couple of matchups this weekend. Friday night hosting Iowa. That's a 6 o'clock first serve at the Fieldhouse, a little earlier than usual because Saturday the team turns around right away and hosts number 3 ranked Penn State for a 2:30 Saturday matinee, nationally televised on NBC. Big opportunity for the Badgers to be showcased again, this time on the home floor in front of the national audience. Of course, you can also listen to every Wisconsin volleyball broadcast this year with John Audius on the call right here on Madison's new home for Wisconsin Badgers volleyball, 100.5 ESPN. And it is our pleasure now to be joined by Wisconsin's Anna Smrek. Anna, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me here on the Jump Around. We appreciate the time, and the team, after 9 straight wins, was riding high until a tough one last week against Nebraska. You bounced back well against Illinois on Sunday. What's the vibe around the team heading into these huge ones this weekend, including the big one with Penn State?
Hey, Jesse. Yeah, I mean, first, great to be here. But I think the mentality is just getting back after it. I think we played a game that wasn't quite ourselves versus Nebraska, and I mean, they did a great job of applying tremendous pressure on us. But rolling into Illinois, we had to really think about next game mentality. We have to move on because that's how our conference is. You just keep going, and if you stick or dwell on one game, you're gonna get steamrolled in the next one. So you have to be present in almost every moment. So with a quick turnaround from Iowa to Penn State, the biggest thing will be mentally taking one game at a time and not letting ourselves get too ahead. But as soon as those games come around, we're locked in for each one.
Anna, just to put this in perspective for everybody and how unique this scenario was when Nebraska came here and got a win last week. You're a senior. How many home matches had you lost in your career at Wisconsin?
Not a lot. I can't
like
really think
one,
of many.
two,
That's
maybe.
for
Like
sure.
It's crazy. You guys have had such
Maybe.
a home dominant stretch at the Fieldhouse. So, what does it mean for your team after that happens? What are you guys saying to one another as you get ready now for another top 3 showdown with Penn State coming to town this week? You know you have your work cut out for you, but I think like for the amount that you guys have lost at home, it's crazy to think that it's barely ever happened in the last 5-6 years. So, what's your message to one another going into this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's looking to each other because obviously we have an amazing crowd. I think they plan to have a red out on Saturday again, just like previously we did a big whiteout. So the fans always bring the energy, and I think we have to really key in on ourselves and focus on how we're mentally preparing ourselves going into the game and looking towards each other. There's going to be a lot of outside noise and people saying different stuff, and we're going to be on a big national television network as well for the game. So I think looking to each other and supporting each other, especially with having some young people on our court as well and getting into the game in big leadership roles, just sticking with them. And because the more they get to play in those environments, the more comfortable and confident they will also feel, even though it is our home court. It's completely different than environments that they've gotten to play in previously. So just really kind of sticking like this.
Anna Smrek, Wisconsin volleyball, joining me, Jesse Nelson, here on the Jump Around in for Jim Rutledge today here on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel. Anna, you've been really coming alive here lately. 3 straight matches with double-digit kills. You've been electric to watch and to listen to out on the court here on the Badgers Volleyball Radio Network. What has changed for you, especially during that 9-match winning streak, that you've really come alive and into your own here in the mid-stages of this season?
I would say the biggest thing is my connection with Charlie has been growing and getting stronger. Of course, working on my own different mental games and technique-wise and just learning different things about myself in the gym, but giving confidence to her because she is a freshman. You know, she's leading an offense with a lot of experienced seniors, and that can be a lot of pressure and stress. And I never want her to feel like it's always on her. You know, there's a connection. It goes both ways. So keep giving confidence to her where, hey, I'm up for you every single ball. And, you know, passers backcourt, we have Lola, freshman libero. Hey, you pass this ball, I'm going to put it away. Keep feeding confidence in them. And I think allowing myself to share that, because I was once in their shoes as a freshman surrounded by seniors. And it's hard. And they gave me a lot of confidence my freshman year, which I think changed my game a lot as well and gave me confidence to play in those big moments. So just trying to funnel the system and do the same for myself.
Can you explain how, for fans who may not be as familiar with and what Charlie Furbringer's role is as the setter? She's essentially the quarterback of your team, and she's setting everyone else up to be in the right positions. And as a freshman, like you said, with such an experienced squad, I think we all talked about how much experience your team brought back this year from the team that made the Final Four a year ago, but didn't talk about the freshmen that are part of this team and will be part of this program moving forward for years to come. Charlie's having an instant impact this year, and you can see the difference from where it started against Texas and Stanford in those Fiserv Forum matches to where she is now and how she's developed that relationship with your team. Can you explain more about that for fans who may not be as familiar?
I mean, Charlie has been doing a great job. She's getting in the gym. She's putting the work in to get better and be able to run the offense that, you know, systematically we want to try and do. You know, there's a lot of different elements that go into how that turns out in a game, whether it's our passing, there's a flow of everything, what our defense looks like. Can we stay in system? Which can change a lot. I think that's one of the things of Nebraska is that we were having a trouble finding our system and our flow to the game. So there was there wasn't a rhythm that we can kind of follow, which made everyone's game a little bit choppy, including myself. I was not, you know, it was not my best game. But as for Charlie, it's the flow. It's giving her the comfort. It's giving the confidence when we're not in those perfect situations that we can still take care of business. But she's doing an excellent job in learning, and same with Lola. You know, they're both in big leadership roles. They're running our offense. Lola's running the back row as a libero, and there's constant communication and talk that needs to happen. So it's bringing them along and, you know, reminding them it's like we need to step up in these big moments, and you're not alone.
What does the home match at the Fieldhouse mean to you all? You all talk so glowingly about the fans rolling in and sprinting to their seats right when the doors open. What does it mean for you, and what are you expecting from that crowd here on Saturday afternoon for the nationally televised match against third-ranked Penn State?
I mean, they always show up and show out. You know, Red Out's going to be great. They're going to bring it's going to be loud, lots of energy. And the best part is no matter win or lose, we always have so much support. And that is what truly gives us the confidence to go out there and, you know, that there's always going to be people cheering us on. So the crowd, it's an experience like no other. I mean, I graduated in a few months, and I'm honestly going to miss the aspect of the Fieldhouse. It's something that's affected me and is going to stick with me for the rest of my life.
Well, I'm sure those fans are going to miss you as well out on the floor, but plenty to take care of before we get to that point, no doubt.
Yes,
I do want to
exactly.
I want to ask you for a moment, because this is going to be a fun wrinkle coming up here. So after the matches this week against Iowa and Penn State at the Fieldhouse, you have the big road trip that's been circled all season long going out to Los Angeles, USC and UCLA. You're playing those matches, by the way. 10 p.m. start local on that Thursday night at USC, and then 9:30 on Saturday night at UCLA. So late night Wisconsin volleyball here on the network. What do you guys have planned going out to LA? Are there a big, like, do you have like a travel agent that's booking everything for you guys? You got all these big plans out on the beach? Anything good going on, or is it just take care of business?
Not that I know of. I mean, definitely a business trip. We're on a mission always. I'm not sure what exactly the plan is. I think we're going to arrive at USC and we might go into practice right away, and I'm not sure what's scheduled around that, but we do adjusting to time change, getting our bodies right from being on a long plane ride. So I'm assuming it's going to be a lot of prep, getting our bodies right instead of going in for those late night matches and mentally preparing ourselves as well. That might be a walk on the beach. I don't know. But whatever, Kelly, sometimes he can spring little surprises on us. But I think it'll mainly be how can we adjust to the environment and stuff like that.
Well, Wisconsin volleyball has won 10 of its last 11 matches. You guys have been hot here in the mid-stage of the season, getting into Big Ten conference play, and a huge couple of matches this weekend at home. Friday night with Iowa, and then the big one Saturday afternoon against number 3 Penn State. Nationally televised, going to be a sold-out crowd. Red out, no doubt, going to be electric at the Fieldhouse. Anna Smrek, thank you so much for taking the time. Always great catching up with you. Great to see you again.
Thanks, Jesse. Good to see you too.
Anna Smrek joining me here on The Jump Around. My name's Jesse Nelson, in for Jim Rutledge hosting this week's show. Wisconsin volleyball certainly has done a lot of winning over the last month, and you can do a lot of winning as well, because winners go to Ho Chunk Gaming Madison. The Jump Around brought to you in part by Ho Chunk Gaming Madison. Winners go to Ho Chunk Gaming Madison. I already told you that. One of the best things is they open on Friday, and they stay open all weekend long until 2 a.m. on Monday. So you get a whole weekend to experience it, and especially this weekend when the football teams have a bye. Well, what else you got going on? Let's get over to Ho Chunk Gaming Madison, do some winning. Millions of dollars are won every single weekend over at Ho Chunk Gaming Madison. Go be a winner. Go to Ho Chunk Gaming Madison this weekend. Final thoughts here as the Wisconsin Badgers week comes to, well, it's coming up on a big weekend, but also with no football game this weekend, it does feel a little different. Montana State and Appalachian State for the men's basketball program coming up here on Thursday and Sunday, going to be big. Of course, the Penn State and Iowa matches for the volleyball program at the Fieldhouse on Friday and Saturday, going to be big. And don't forget, by the way, we still have the number 1 ranked women's hockey team in the country. Everyone seems to forget about women's hockey. We got the number 1 ranked team in the country. They just pulverized St. Cloud State, who was a top 10 opponent on the road. Wisconsin went and got 2 huge wins. Keep an eye on Wisconsin women's hockey all season long. That's going to be a fun story to watch. I think this might be a natty year for Wisconsin women's hockey. I think we got a really good shot there. So I just had to get that take on Wisconsin hockey out while I was still hosting the show here.
Do you have to do that, Jesse? I mean, you've already jinxed Badgers volleyball this season.
I haven't jinxed. Okay, you guys bring this up on Jim, Matt, and Molly all the time. I didn't jinx anything.
Jesse, you know what you did.
All I did was take over as the studio anchor for the volleyball pre- and post-game shows on the network broadcast. And just because I took over as that, and coincidentally the team started 0-3 for the first time since 1990 before I was born, doesn't mean diddly. They are doing fine now. They're 16-5. They're a top 10 team coming into a big home match here against Penn State this weekend. Vibes are high right now on Wisconsin volleyball, Wooly. We don't have to jinx. If we're going to point out any jinxes, I want to point to old T, who's been part of the Badgers football radio network for a couple of years, and how's that team doing since he took over there?
I mean, come on.
We want to start pointing out jinxes. We're battling for a bowl game.
Look,
with
I think
old
there are
T.
a lot of other factors going into what's changed Badgers football. The only change in Badgers volleyball has been Jesse Nelson.
You want to point out jinxes. Krissy is still standing next to me here in the Everlight Solar Studio. Krissy, how much winning have all these teams done since you've been in school here at the University of Wisconsin, huh?
I mean, we did have a national championship in volleyball and women's hockey. So there you go.
But since... All right. Get out of here, Krissy. No one even knew you were here anymore. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Jump Around this week. Looking forward to a big weekend for Wisconsin athletics. And Jim Rutledge will be back to host the show next week. Thanks to Primetime Wollersheim. Of course, thanks to Anna Smrek from the volleyball program. Thanks to Krissy Birdsall. And thanks to you for coming and joining the show today. This has been the Jump Around on the ESPN Madison YouTube channel, outfitted by Iron Jock.